I've been in situations where I have needed to prove my worth and felt like people weren't listening. And so I think that's really what drove me to get better at the data and the numbers, and what drives me to help other people understand it is to support other people's careers. I think, rising tide, rising ships. I really think if we can all support each other and tell better stories about what we're doing and how we're impacting, like we're just helping each other out.
Hello, and welcome back to Product Marketing Life. It's Sid Kaitan. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager, and today I'm joined by Jess Ruby, Director of Growth Marketing at UniUni. Hey, that kind of run. Jess, thanks for coming, and can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Director of Growth Marketing, as you said. I've been working in marketing for over 10 years. I worked in tech, CPG, agency, and now I'm in logistics. So varied background, started out more on, the generalist kind of side of things, content side of things, and then have made my way into growth marketing, which is where I live now.
Interesting. Before we get into all the fun product marketing stuff, what do you like to do for fun?
I'm a dork. So I like to cycle. I am a road bike. I'm a road cyclist, and I like to read books. So those are kind of my two activities that I like to do, and I like to do them with friends. So that's kind of a little bit what I do.
Okay, I gotta ask, what kind of books are we talking? Because I'm like a self-help nerd, so I'm curious what other books people read.
I love when people ask me this question. I'm always like, why do I offer that information? I do read everything. Like I'm an avid reader. But I really love romance. Yeah. And I am usually quite proud of it, even though people look at me weird. I love a good happy ending.
Love it. Yeah, why not? That's cool. And I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that.
Thanks. That's what this is about, right? This whole podcast. Yeah.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, yeah, with that, let's go into a little bit closer to the marketing stuff. What is a non-marketing skill or habit that makes you better at your job?
I think weirdly, a habit I'm going to say randomly is I'm one of those really obnoxious morning workout people. I want to be clear. I'm not a morning person. I hate mornings, but I like to force myself up and I work out and do some sort of workout in the morning. I think it makes me better at my job because it helps me, manage stress. And it also just helps me clear my mind and sometimes work through problems that's going on in the day before I get there. And so that when I sit down at my desk, I'm A, way more awake, and B, I've thought things through a little bit, not in front of a computer where there's a million distractions. And it also helps you process, it helps you be more patient. It helps you manage things that are going on in your day. So there's your random answer for you. I think that one.
I love that. That's the first time anyone said that. And it's so true. I'm the exact same of not a morning person, but I know I have to do this in order to, like you said, feel the calm when I start the day. So, okay. That's a really good one, actually. So after you're at your desk, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your career and how you got into, usually this is where I say your journey into product marketing, but with you, it's how you got into growth marketing, where you're at today.
Yeah. And funnily enough, as you and I have chatted about previously, it also led me to product marketing. My growth and my journey is a little bit nonlinear, as I think a lot of people are. I started in comms very briefly and then moved into the agency side of things, which I worked in for a few years, and it was tons of fun, but I just could tell even then, it wasn't exactly right. And I wanted to have more ownership of the strategy. And it always drove me crazy that I couldn't make more decisions. We had to just kind of do and take away from, and I could see stuff happening on the other side of the table that I was intrigued by. So I made the switch to client side to go in-house. And then kind of half fell my way into what ended up being early growth roles before that was a title. And this was just because I love to solve a problem. And at the company at the time, they had a major challenge and they needed it solved. And it ended up being that the best way to solve it was to find some data and start doing qualitative research. And then I was like, the best way to deal with this is through ads. And then I kind of felt my way and ended up moving myself into a performance role when those were still new and demand gen with like a term we were just building, and growth was a term we were just building. And so I ended up in those kinds of roles and have kind of been there ever since, although I have changed, industries several times and companies several times and moved around and rejigged it. And that led me to working in tech, where I ended up being, the only marketer a few times, or like marketing lead, even though I was still on the junior side. And I had to build these teams, and I had to hire product marketers, despite having never held the role. And so I actually had to build product marketing functions for some of these small startup companies. And I started to really learn it, understand, and fall into it, and be like, oh my God, this is so important. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Very interesting. And now you are director of growth marketing at UniUni. I'm curious, yeah, what's kind of your charter there? What excites you about this role, this company?
Yeah, UniUni is very cool. It's last mile logistics, which is a very interesting world. Like, we basically get all the packages to the houses. So it's not easy, it's complicated, it's huge. And in these days is very important because everybody loves packages and they want them quickly. Um, and so, yeah, UniUni is a really cool company because it's a hyper growth company. It's growing so quickly. So it's fascinating. Like, every time we put a process in place, we outgrow it, which is a wild world to be a part of and super exciting. And so my mandate as director of growth is I touch, all the different pieces of marketing that enable growth. And that includes, events, SEO, SEM, paid ads, I product marketing, I support sales enablement. It's a long list. And I have a team of people who do help me do it. So not just
Okay, you have a team of people. What is that?
people
What
direct report.
I was going to say, that's a lot of stuff. Yeah, what does your team look like?
It's really interesting. It's very modern structure. I have a couple of full-time employees who work directly for me. I have two consultants that do part-time, and I have two agencies, and I think we're bringing on a third. So not a small amount of people that support me. And I have my VP is fantastic. So I have a support above me as well.
Very cool. Okay. Um, we talked about this a little bit, but in terms of product marketing, growth marketing, I think there's a lot that can be exchanged in terms of knowledge and understanding. How can product marketers be more growth minded? I'm sure you've seen, as you said, you've worked with a bunch. What do you think is kind of missing, especially now, given the state of things, I guess you could say, with layoffs, shrinking budgets? Like, as a PMM myself, I find myself needing to justify more. So how can we put on the growth mindset hat in order to, yeah, I guess, look better and sell ourselves properly?
I think it's so important. I have many friends in product marketing that I developed over the years and love to work with. And it always surprises me, even today, when I go to ask them a question or talk to them about something that I'm working on, the disconnect between product and growth is still very, very prevalent. And I think um, everything is shrinking and the way that we're working is changing. And I think that everybody needs to fully understand their impact on how marketers as a role and marketing as a function is hitting the bottom line, is helping revenue, is helping growth. Um, and I don't think that's common. I did a speaking session earlier this year, and I went to all my product marketing friends, and I made them get on calls with me and be like, would this be interesting to you if I talked about it? And like running ideas by them, and every single one of them, and I mean every one of them, I was like, hey, I want to talk about data. And they were all like, that's not relevant to us. We won't care. You're going to lose your whole audience. So I was like, what? How can this be the response? Like, as a leader who oversees a lot of different parts of the division and then reports to the exec, I have to report on how we are affecting growth and how we're affecting revenue. You need to understand that in this day and age, especially in marketing, where you're one of the most expensive divisions in the company, and a lot of it is headcount, you need to be able to justify that headcount. You need to be able to justify the work that your team is doing on how it's a business expense, how it's going towards business development, and what the ROI is on that. And if you can't, and if you're a product marketer going, this doesn't matter to me, like I would very much disagree, because I think in this day and age, we all need to be able to say why what we're doing is important, which I very much believe in it.
Yeah, I love that. And like, I'm curious, where does you said you've worked with a few product marketing friends now? Like, what is that mindset shift? Where does the aha moment come and you see PMM start to move towards this growth mindset?
I'd love to tell you it's because like I speak so highly on data that they're all like, I love this and I want to learn more. No, their eyes glaze over. What really happens is layoffs. And unfortunately, that is when things start to connect. And then I have them coming to me going, can you teach me a little bit about this? How do I justify my role? How do I come back to this and like explain what I do and why it's important? And then they start to pay attention. And that's when I really do see the shift that really like clicks for people, which is an unfortunate answer.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like, when you have to go through this exercise, like, where do you start, I guess?
Yeah, typically it's like teaching, because there's a lot of data and numbers, and the minute you show that to people, like again, the eye glaze is really real. But kind of trying to explain to somebody like what numbers are important and how you can directly find out how you're driving impact, and then it can get kind of exciting. So I would typically, pull together a scenario and say like, okay, this is how you can like work it out to see like exactly what revenue impact like your work did. And that's when it kind of gets exciting.
Yeah. And I like we talked about earlier, I think there's like PMM's obsessed about the qualitative, right? Like we're always doing interviews. We love to talk to customers. So it's not like we don't love data, I guess, if you count that as data, but it's the
Yeah, absolutely.
quantitative. Yeah, it's the quantitative where it starts to fall apart. So yeah, like what does that look like in terms of, all right, it's time to, like you said, kind of move this way and think of it this way as well, at least.
So I guess my question back to you is like, what would be a qualitative metric you bring me and be like, this is what I'm looking at, or this is what I just did. How do I measure it? Question, I
Fun,
suppose.
fun. Okay. So the easiest one that comes to mind right away is, let's say, I'll start with the business problem. So at least there's some context. Let's say we're seeing that, you know, our close one rates are dropping because we don't have a great story or narrative. And I noticed that our sales team is like all has a different deck and they're not singing from this same sheet of music. It's just chaos. So, I revamped the deck. I created something that is going to enable those champions and the first call, their second call, to be able to sell this internally. That's great. Sales is happy. Maybe even up to the CEO is like, that was cool. We know this is working. But how do I, once again, justify my existence and say, hey, this is really working? And like, this is why I get paid the big bucks.
Yeah. And that's a great example because that's the thing that really happens. And it's actually a tough example because then you have to work with the sales team and they're notoriously bad at getting data. Um, but it's a really good one. So for that scenario, and what I'm going to say is like with data, you always want to run a test. That's kind of the rule of thumb. And what a test mostly needs to getting into like the high level is like a start date, an end date, and a hypothesis. So you kind of be saying, we made this new deck. We believe it's going to convert more sales, right? That's the end goal here. You're enabling the sales team. So I'm just going to look at a sheet here and then write down a number. So if we look at it and we say like, if we looked at the pipeline, we said like, okay, this is the day we start on, and we start using this deck. And then you get this whole sales team on a call and you say, tomorrow, this is the deck you get. And you potentially have something like HubSpot or Salesforce, and you can go in there and be like, how many meetings are booked over the next 2 weeks? And hopefully you can track that and make sure to tell your sales team that you're running a test. And over the next 2 weeks, short period of time, they should be able to follow that. They have to track everything and tell you how many meetings were booked, how many were had, and how many times and everyone has to use the new sales deck. And if the whole sales team is too big, choose 3 salespeople, make it smaller that you have a good relationship with and will absolutely listen to you. So you now are starting to build up some numbers. How many of those meetings turned into opportunities? Now you have a conversion rate. So say you had like, looking at it, say you had, 10 meetings booked and 80% of them, well, let's go 50%, let's make this real. 50% of them became opportunities. So that's a 50% conversion rate. That's really good. Okay, so you're looking at more numbers now. Now you have 5 opportunities. What happens to those opportunities? Do those opportunities close? Let's say 2 of them closed. Let's say your annual revenue for each closed customer on those deal sizes were $300,000. You've now brought in $600,000 of hard revenue at the bottom of the funnel based on a sales deck you made. And that's over, you can do it a 2-week period, and you have all of your numbers and you have your conversion rates from each step of that to then turn around and say, like, these are some key metrics that have affected the bottom line of this company.
I like that a lot because I would say like my first role didn't even think about it. Like you said, it just went straight over my head. This doesn't matter. Second role is like, oh, I need to have like some good, resume padding. And I started looking at the big numbers. So I'll go to Salesforce and just kind of, abstractly, okay, did this launch result in this? And that is great. It's a starting point. But I think this like surgical approach really builds confidence too, because then you really get to see the impact of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen this like light bulb go off for other PMMs and like, the success they've had from it? Just curious.
I've definitely seen it in like confidence success and like I've had you're making the point, like a lot of them come to you when they're like writing resumes and said like, hey, how can you show me some stuff that we worked on together that impacted? And I did have a friend who I went through I pulled a time period, and so we could pull real numbers, and we said this was like a messaging project that we worked on that we tested. We ran the ads on Google search, and I pulled like numbers out of analytics like for over 2 weeks, or I think maybe we did a month for that one for the test. And we said, okay, I know we implemented your new messaging on this day. We knew the conversion rate had gone up. This was you could say like I increased the conversion rate on these ads by 4%. That's huge, right? And so we were like putting these, because she was like, I want hard numbers in my resume and I don't know how to do this. So we did stuff like that. It's like we got 10 meetings booked through sales. We got an increase of 4% conversion rate on the ad. That resulted in, and then we can tie it back. We know what the annual like AR is in a SaaS business. You can tie it back to the revenue to say this impacted or influenced X amount of revenue. And so we did put it in her resume. She ended up getting a job, but it also just like, I could see that spark that you're asking about, like go off and be like, oh my God, this actually is something that I impacted. And then she can walk into a meeting or an interview and talk more confidently about the work she's doing. Because it feels so good when you can connect those dots. I think that's why I like growth marketing, because can't argue with the numbers.
Yeah. Yes. I like that. Yeah. And it's interesting to me, like the dynamic, I guess, is probably, as you mentioned, like you are gold and expected to bring in dollars. I'm guessing you've had to sit on whatever it is, leadership or board meetings and report, hey, we spent this much money. This is what we got from it. It's pretty interesting that I rarely see that in product marketing. Why do you think that is? Like, if you had to, whatever, kind of like extrapolate, why do you think that's just like the case?
I actually don't know. I guess what if I had to like muse, I would say it's a result of this is the case in most marketing. Like when I first started doing this, people thought it was like nuts. They were like, why would you be putting numbers against everything? Who cares? I was like one of the few growth marketers. Demand gen was a thing and people were working in performance, but it wasn't as broadly looked at where I was like pulling numbers from all parts of marketing and looking at it that lens. Um, and I think that was just the results of people were like, yes, this works. We can kind of tell. And I think that's been the case with a lot of marketing where I find especially with marketers, you're either technical or you're creative. And then there's a few of us that like can cross the ladder. And I think more people cross it than they realize. I think people are really afraid to say that they do. But I think everyone's like, I'm creative. Like you don't go into marketing because you were great at math at school. Like we didn't all get here because we were like acing math and we loved it, right? I think maybe a few do. I had an old VP who was also an accountant, but it's rare. So I'd say that like that's why. And so no one reported on it because no one felt comfortable in it. And there was enough of people being like, yeah, we get it. We need marketing. But as marketing departments get more expensive and budgets get tighter, I think it's just changed in mindset. And I think mindset across every business I've seen is impact, impact, impact from every side of the business is like, that is how business is now being looked at as success.
Yeah. I really like that. And like, even in this example, of course, one of the main use cases is resume padding at the end of the day and like being more hireable. But even while you're in the company, right, there's of course ways you can use this type of data. Um, any thoughts on like how, like, let's go through back to the exercise we just did. How should a product marketer go and report this type of impact that they've had? Because I think some of this also comes down to, you know, we wait too long, and then it's like while you're already on the chopping block, now we're talking about this impact we made versus communicating it, in advance proactively. I've noticed that, yeah, usually demand gen or growth is already doing this, whereas with product marketers is kind of like, oh, you need us, like check mark.
Yeah, which is an interesting mindset because it's like I agree, and I think we're bad as marketers too sometimes. I think growth marketing is easy because I mean we spend a lot of money on ads. I have to report on what's happening with that. So I think, like you said, that's happening already. Like you can't just be spending a business's money without saying where it's going. I mean, you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. Um, but I think that we forget that we should be talking more highly about like what we're doing in marketing and how it's affecting the business. And I think that's really true because the decisions are being made, it's being talked about at the higher levels. And by the time the decisions happened, like that conversation was had a while ago. And if you're not talking about your impact, if you're not, and even then, like you should be talking about it. Do you want that promotion? Do you want that raise? Looking through like a positive lens. Do you want to be like praised for like? Do you want to show the impact of your work in general? So I think we should be doing it. How to do that is a great question. Like with reporting and on ads and stuff, like you would do it on like a weekly or a monthly or a biweekly cadence, depending on how your business is set up. I would say like talk to your like marketing leadership and say, hey, I want to start sending you through some numbers or like we're running this campaign or we're launching this new deck and I want to talk about the impact of it. So I'm going to run this little test over the next month and provide you some numbers. And then you can send it as like a recap at the end of the month or like whatever. You must do some sort of reporting or you must have a meeting with your team. You can bring it there. You can send it by email and say, hey, look, I pulled this. This was like the impact it had. I thought it was a really cool metric. And 9 times out of 10, your boss is going to be, I'd say 10 times out of 10, your boss is going to be thrilled and be like, this is amazing. And like, I'm going to share this from the rooftops. I'm going to share it with you, Zach. It's a good story for everybody. And so like, you're really going to be doing yourself a lot of favors. But yeah, I'd say like, figure out what the reporting structure is. If it exists, if it doesn't, see if you can send it to somebody like, and choose a timeline.
Yeah. This idea of like taking the kind of bottoms up approach to me is like the biggest unlock. Cause like I said, some of the top down stuff I've done, and it's like, all right, this is what we think we did. Whereas if you take the surgical approach, the other benefit is CROs, sales, they think in terms of the deals. Like they're talking the specific logo level. So if you can say, hey, out of this sample size of 10 to 20 deals, we saw this impact, like it becomes way more real as well. So I think that's like a huge benefit of this. Um,
It also helps
sorry.
them understand it too. Like they want to close more deals. So they're like, give me data. They're like, I don't have time. I'm super busy trying to pitch. But then if you're like, but if I know this, what worked and what didn't, I can get you even more stuff or this can be even better for next time, then like they're going to be down. They want to close more deals if you can help them do it. So I think it's also getting them on board a little bit and sharing that story and not expecting them to understand what you do, which I think can be a little bit of a trap as marketers we fall into.
Yeah. Okay, so to recap, a few reasons you should do this. One is, for your resume, for staying hireable. Two is while you're at the company, building influence. The third one I want to kind of mention that now that I think about happens more often than not. When it comes to establishing OKRs and ideas, like you have a campaign, you want to launch it as a product marketer, you're very cross-functional and you have to influence without authority and get like other people on board. And I've noticed some of the things that like fell apart in terms of maybe not being able to rely on someone else or like things like that. It's because there was no clear goal. Like it was like, we have to launch this campaign, but if content doesn't agree that we need to do this and dedicate X amount of resources, it falls apart. So I guess a very long way to say, like, potentially, how would you wish that product marketing worked with you as a growth leader?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question and a tough question. I think for me, always um, collaboration is key, um, and really patience and understanding like of each other's challenges. And I think when I've worked with great product leaders in the past, um, we've tried to understand each other's worlds and how much what each other needs, and then how much we can help each other out. And I think that is always the best way to approach it, like with empathy. And like I said, don't expect everyone to understand. I don't know why everyone thinks they understand marketing and they really don't. And I think that misperception, and we're like, what I do, you get my value, when they don't, but they think they do, is a huge issue that I have faced in every business I have ever worked in. And so I think I've learned patience over the years of being like, okay, I'm going to explain this. And it doesn't bother me because I'm like, it's okay that you don't understand. And it's up to me to help you, even someone in product, or someone in sales, or someone in like like there's a lot of nuances. So I think explaining, understanding, and like working together, and then yeah, like be open, be like, I really want to get better at metrics. How can I work with you closer to get a hold of that information? And I could be like, great, I'd love to help you out with that, which as you heard, I've done. And be like, well, I really need this thing. Can you help me on this? And help me understand there's just all this through, or like, can you send me this thing, or can you help me run this test? And I feel like as long as you're working together, like everybody's winning, right? So that's kind of how I approach it. Maybe yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I like it. We really got to understand each other. Like growth just does ads, right? Like that's it.
That's all we do. That's it. Podcast done.
I'll leave you with like kind of one bigger question, which is like, why are you so passionate about this topic? You've kind of done the roadshow, you've helped a few PMMs out. Why? What motivates you aside from everything we just talked about? Like, yeah, I guess what's the why behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about marketing, if you couldn't tell. I find it fascinating. I love talking about data. I think it's just so cool of how we like influence and affect growth, and we really like, it's just such an imperative business function that I don't think we talk about enough. So I get excited about that. The real answer though, why I'm so passionate about it, is I've been laid off. Um, I've been in situations where I have needed to prove my worth and felt like people weren't listening. And so I think that's really what drove me to get better at the data and the numbers, and what drives me to help other people understand it is to support other people's careers. I think, rising tide, rising ships. I really think if we can all support each other and tell better stories about what we're doing and how we're impacting, like we're just helping each other out.
So true. I really like that. Yeah, we all have to kind of raise the perception and understanding around marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll leave with a few questions. One of them I ask on every guest, so I'm really excited to see your answer. Product marketing is blank. Fill in the blank.
Bridge. It's
Okay.
my answer. Maybe not a great one. It's a bridge. It's a bridge.
It's a bridge. Okay. Can you elaborate a little more?
I always think of it as like product marketers speak slightly different language. Like it's like I always find when I talk to the tech teams or the dev teams and the product teams, like they speak like, Klingon. Overall, Jen, I'm a door. We're over here trying to speak, English. So I think that they bridge that gap between, sales, marketing, and product in a way that like basically like translates stuff that the rest of us on the outskirts can't do as well. So I think it's a really valuable skill and keeps things like moving in a company and much better than without.
It's so much more fun because you're not, technically a product marketer. You don't self-identify that way. Super cool. Okay. Final question. Yeah. How can people learn more about you and your work? That's been a great combo.
Yeah. You can follow me on LinkedIn, I guess. That's probably the best place for it.
I should just stop asking that question. We all know where you can find each other, right? Awesome. Well, Jess, thank you so much. This has been a great combo. I think there's a lot of good learnings. Yeah, really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great. Great to chat.
For everyone still tuned in, thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoyed the podcast, please help us spread the word to other product marketers. Thanks again, and have a great morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are.